Hey everybody, Eric Smith here with more of F. Paul Wilson's Secret History of the World series. And today I am talking about The Haunted Heir by F. Paul Wilson, published by Tor. It is a Repairman Jack novel, and so far this is one of my absolute favorites. Is that the review? No, that's not all I'm going to say. Jack is still reeling from the events of the previous book, but he's out with his girlfriend Gia at an art gallery, and he gets kind of roped into taking some of these artists to a psychic, and some things happen, and the psychic ends up hiring Jack because some competitors are causing trouble, and Jack is, while looking into that, some other weird stuff. It turns out that this psychic, the house that the psychic is in may actually be haunted. The psychic, of course, is a fake, but now there's real weird supernatural stuff going on in his house. And at the same time, Jack takes another job, and this guy comes to Jack and says, "My brother told me that during the new moon he might cause harm to himself or others, and he's worried about that, so I want you to just watch over him and keep him from hurting anybody." So Jack takes that job, and it turns out to be much more than the client made it sound like, and everything is going to come to a head, of course, because it's a Repairman Jack novel. So that's kind of the nutshell right there. All right, that's just to whet your appetite. So as I said, I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. If possible, I would have given this one 6 out of 5. Absolutely loved it. Part of that is my own personal bias. I love stuff that deals with psychics and behind the scenes, and so we learn a little bit more about Jack's past. And when we find out that he, at one point, worked for a psychic. So he knows the tricks of the trade. So once he's hired by this guy, Iffison, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, and that's not his real name, but when he's hired by Iffison because these attempts have been made on his life, Jack comes in and basically he's like, "I know the tricks. I know how you do these things." And so at first, of course, Iffison, his real name is Lyle Kenton, he and his brother, Charlie, are a little leery of Jack, but then they kind of open up, and it's really nice to see Jack interacting with people on somewhat on the same wavelength. And again, I love seeing these behind-the-scenes things, books about people trying to expose psychics always interest me. Whether fiction or nonfiction, whether or not it turns out the psychic is fake or real. Of course, that would be in the fiction if they turn out to be real. But I always like that kind of stuff. And hearing them talk, hearing Jack and the Kenton brothers talking about, again, the tricks of the trade is something that really interests me. And when Jack goes after this other psychic that's trying to kill the Kenton brothers, we get more of this behind-the-scenes stuff, and this, I mean, Jack's trying to pull a scam, and I really like that stuff. But then, with all that aside, we have these supernatural events that have started happening in Menelaus Manor. Again, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Let's see. I thought it was written down on the back of the book. I was going to spell it out for you, but I do not see it on the back, so I'm not going to. Oh, wait, there it is. Menelaus. Menelaus Manor? I don't know. But anyway, it's haunted. Crazy stuff starts happening. And so even if you took out the Repairman Jack stuff and all the other things going on, this is a great, creepy, haunted house story as well. So that just gives it more points in my book. Actually, in F. Paul Wilson's book. So that stuff is great. So again, you could take out everything else and just have a great haunted house novel. But it's not just that. You have all this other stuff. And there's things going on in Jack's personal life with Gia, and there's this other case that he's taken, and I'm not going to get into too many details about that here in this part because, I can talk about the fact that Menelaus Manor is haunted. That's really not giving too much away. We learned that early on. I can talk about the fact that, the psychic stuff, because that's early on, but I don't want to get into this other case that Jack is working on, aside from what I've already told you, how he was hired and what he was told, because it gets into crazy territory. The usual cast of characters is here: Julio and Abe, Gia, Vicky, Bernie. There's a guy that makes fake IDs for Jack. It's Bernie or Ernie or something like that, I think. He's here. We've seen him before. Well written, as always. Just absolutely, definitely one of my favorite Repairman Jack novels. 6 out of 5 stars. Highly recommended. And as with most of these, pretty sure you could read it. I mean, you'll probably have a few questions, but I'm pretty sure you could just read this without having read anything else. It explains, the main stories, the crux of the book. It's all in there. It just, because it does tie in and is part of a series, it's going to reference things that you're not familiar with. If you just read this by itself. And speaking of that, this is where we get into the whole secret history of the world part. So if all you wanted was a review, you can shut this off now. We're going to get a bit into spoiler territory. So let's talk secret history of the world. Got my copy of Signals here with my timeline. So this takes place in, August of year 0-2. Just a reminder, this whole story, this whole secret history of the world ends with Night World, which is in year 0. And then our timeline moves backwards from there. So this is year 0-2. And this is in August. Night World is in May. So less than 2 years now till the end of the world as we know it. And the tomb says summer. That's the first book in the Repairman Jack series. The tomb says summer in year 0-3. And in this book specifically, The Haunted Heir, Jack does say it's been a year / almost a year since the events of the tomb. So this is book 6 so far in the Repairman Jack series, and we've covered slightly less than 365 days, is what it seems like. So that's our timeline, and I believe this is the first time there has been a reference to 9/11, the terrorist attacks. This one was published in 2002, so from a writing standpoint, that makes sense. They don't specifically say when they happened. Like in this book, no one says, remember last September, the terrorist attacks. It's just that it has happened. So again, I don't know if the tomb takes place before or after the September 11th terrorist attacks. And again, I don't know, but I think maybe F. Paul Wilson wanted to keep it a little ambiguous. I'm going to have to take a drink here. All this talking makes my throat a little dry, so pardon me for just a moment. I'm still waiting for that sponsorship from Mountain Dew. All right, so this book, there are a lot of ties with previous things. If you watched the last video in this series, which was about, I want to say hosts. Let's check the list. Yes, hosts. There was an old Russian woman with a white dog that spoke to Jack, kind of warned him about things, told him he'd been drafted into this battle between the Otherness and the Ally. And I even asked if anybody knew if this character was from one of the other books that I haven't read or one of the other stories to let me know. Well, now, in The Haunted Heir, there is another woman. I want to say Indian, but they say something more specific in the book, so I apologize. But there's another woman with a dog who talks to Jack and warns him about certain things. So this is obviously something that's going on. These women with dogs who call themselves mother, or the mother, or your mother. They say different things slightly. Variations, maybe. So that was interesting that we have this theme running through. There's a lot of talk about the otherness. There's a lot of talk about, or a bit of talk, I'll say, about Sal Roma from Conspiracies. That's not his real name. I believe he is the Adversary Reborn. The character from, if we go way back to The Keep, that evil creature was reborn in Reborn, and is now at times using the name Sal Roma. There's talk about him. The deal with the other case that I didn't want to talk too much about may or may not tie in. It may or may not have a supernatural thing. If we're to believe one of the characters who says they've been around for over 200 years, then that's obviously something supernatural. But it is hinted at. Some people think he might just be delusional and believe that this is the case. And then, so, don't know for sure. And since I haven't read every single story that's actually in this Secret History of the World, maybe there's reference to it somewhere else in something that I should have read previously. I don't know. And then, one of the biggest ties is that this Menelaus, however you say it, manor, one of the previous owners actually took stone blocks from the keep, in the keep, and had them transported from Romania to Astoria and put them in the basement. The basement walls are made of these blocks from the keep. And they have, if anybody's read that book or watched my video, they know about the odd-looking crosses that were all embedded in these blocks. Well, those are here, although they've been pried out. But that's part of it. There's a scene where we first get there's bloody crosses on the walls in the basement, and they describe them, and I'm like, those are the freaking things from the keep. And then we learn that the blocks from the keep are in this basement. And so, I mean, that's one of the strongest ties, I suppose, at least with Repairman Jack. I suppose the evil from the keep being reborn in Reborn's a pretty strong tie. But anyway, so that's, man, he's really just pulling all this together. And there's so many other stories to go. But I love it. I would love to be able to talk to F. Paul Wilson to find out how he just put all of this together. And because not all of these things were written in order. I think, and I've mentioned this before, I think The Tomb, which is the first Repairman Jack book, and I always afraid I'm going to get it wrong, Night World, I think those two were written before any of the other Repairman Jack books were written. So he had, and The Keep, obviously, written before that. So he basically had the beginning and the end already done and published and everything, and then filled in everything in between. It's crazy. Man, if I could just look at like his writer's notebooks or talk to him and just ask him about this stuff. I want to know. I like the behind the scenes stuff. But anyway, I think I covered all the points I wanted to as far as the Secret History and this book. Again, lots and lots of ties, things coming together. One of the complaints, for lack of a better term, I had way back when I started this series and read The Tomb, the first Repairman Jack book, was that some things felt a lot like coincidence. Well, now in 2 books in a row, we've had characters, well, in the last book, in Hosts, the character said it. They reference it in this book. But the old lady with the dog told Jack, there are no coincidences. You were part of this battle between good and evil. There are no more coincidences in your life. And so, which one could consider that a writer's crutch, because then he can do anything. And things where the reader might normally be like, oh, that's crazy. That coincidence is way too out there. Unbelievable. Now we can just say, oh, well, but it's because of the otherness and the battle between good and evil. It's all forces are being forces are manipulating people's lives, which is fine. It works. I love it. But it's just the thought I had about that. But yeah, okay, so I think I covered all that. Yeah, just fantastic book. I love the way it's all tied together. Next up, we have Gateways, another Repairman Jack book. Takes place in September of year 0-2. Looking forward to that, man. If these books are just getting better and better. I'm expecting, not that I think F. Paul Wilson's going to fail, but I find it difficult to imagine that that any author would be able to keep up this level of excellence. So I'm sort of waiting for the book where I'm like, yeah, that was good, but it's not nearly as good as some of the other ones. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. All right. And I just want to tell you, this has nothing to do with The Haunted Heir or anything, but this was so good, and I had so many questions and things, and again, want to know how everything ties together. I got an Amazon gift card for Christmas, and I immediately went and ordered 10 more F. Paul Wilson books that are all part of the Secret History of the World. 2 of them are short story collections, and then some novellas, and some of the novels. I'm not going to add them to this video series. I don't believe. Maybe, I don't know if I'll do a follow-up series once I finish this. That would be kind of odd. There are, let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not sure. A bunch of them I could fit in. Some take place before stuff I've already covered. Definitely not going to go back and do those. But there are at least 6 that take place after the point that I'm at here. Let me know. Let me know if you want me to throw those in. We'll see. I suppose I could. And there are some short stories in there. I don't know if although, from the looks of this, only 1 or 2. But let me know if you're interested. If you want me to extend this series even more and add these other books once they come in, if I can slot them in where they belong in this chronology. All right, that's it. So that's The Haunted Heir by F. Paul Wilson. One of my favorites so far. Highly recommended. Even if you're not going to read the entire series, it's just a great book. All right, that's all I've got. I'm Eric Smith. This has been F. Paul Wilson's Secret History of the World. And until next time, oh, you know what? I almost forgot. And I did forget in the previous video that I just recorded. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please leave them in the comments below. We can talk spoilers in the comments. Just put a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to follow me on social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. On Instagram, I'm Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. Now, that's it. I'm Eric Smith. Until next time, read more books.